All right, so we have another curveball for you. Let's say these roles that individuals could have on these teams, one, they were allowed to have multiple roles. So in theory, many-to-many relationship potentially by itself, because if they use the same role, like leader was for every team, it could be another many-to-many relationship now between this relationship record between the user and the team, and then that with a role that was reused across the team as well. We won't set that up because we basically know how to already do that. But let's say that the names of their roles were actually unique. It was just something that their team members were given the opportunity, like, hey, list yourself off some fun names. We don't care what it is. Great. So they can have, now in this scenario, one user can have many roles, but those roles are unique. They don't exist in context of everything else that they need to be reused. They're just unique. So we really just want a list of the roles that apply to this person, and we want to be able to format that list the way that we want. We can do that in Bildr by creating this list of values and then putting that list of values into a repeating list on these row pages. So first, let's just show how to maybe structure this data. Let's go back to our data collection for the relationship. And let's go to team roles. So we already have the value here, but I'm going to delete these roles because instead of individual roles, we're going to give them multiple. And the way that we're going to organize this, and I'll say this ahead of time, we're going to be coming out with a list field that makes this easier. So even if you don't know JSON, it just works just as naturally as all these other data collections work. We just haven't done it yet. But this is also a great chance to cut your teeth on creating a data structure in a JSON format instead of only relying, let's say, on a grid format like this. So if I wanted to create my own little mini database inside this specific field, I can do that with a JSON structure. And the JSON structure that I want to follow is going to be naming the value and then giving it a value. So let's say one of their roles is leader. Let's give this user another role outside of leader. So we do comma, we do that little bracket, we do quotes, we identify role again as the value. And let's say their next role is food getter. They're responsible for getting the food for the meetings for this team. So we close it off. And let's give them a third role just because this person's really excited about giving themselves responsibilities. We're going to say role and we're going to say note taker. So we close that off and then we do a hard bracket to end it. So what we've just created here is a JSON structure of data. And it's actually, if you ever looked at how code and how even the data collection that you're looking at now actually exists when it's stored in a file, it's this structure. It's using a named value. This is called the key in a JSON object. This is the key. The key is role. And then the value is leader in this case. And here we have the key of role and the value food getter. And so each one of these are what's called a JSON object inside the squiggly brackets. And then I can do a comma and introduce the next record. This would look like a single spreadsheet of roles at the top, and then leader, food getter, and what was the last one? Note taker. Note taker would just be in rows 1, 2, and 3 beneath the header of role. That's all we've created here. So this is a JSON object. And in its entirety, with the hard brackets on the outside, it's a JSON array of objects. And so that's what we've created here, is simply a mini database inside of this individual field right here. And so I'm going to repeat this as we go down here. Maybe I'll change this to analyst. This one's not going to be as aggressive, so they're only going to have one role. This person's going to be, they need to be a leader on the Bildr team, so we're going to do role. We're going to do drinks master. We're going to delete their third role. And our marketing team needs a leader. We're just going to have that leader. He's busy. He or she is only doing one job. And then we've got a note taker here and just a regular Josh. Now we've created separate roles and potentially multiple roles for some of our individuals in this singular field. But how are we going to display this? Because I don't want just to, if I tie this, like right now, if I load up my page, I'm going to see that gibberish. That's not what I want to see, right? I want to see just the normal list of the roles here. So the way I can accomplish that is by going into my page here. I'm going to replace this text paragraph element and add a repeating list element. And I need to create a page for my repeating list element. So let's insert a page into the studio here. Right there. Role page. And I am going to need one element on this that I'm going to bind to the value I set in. So I'm going to grab a text element, place it on the page. I'm going to say this is the role. And then when I click on the element and I go over to our data tab, actually let me start in the top level of this and go down to this and go down to our individual value here so that you can see what happens. Because what I'm about to show you is a really important concept, because one thing I run into all the time when I come across new people who come across Bildr who aren't developers, they see our repeating list element and like, great, this is really cool. Bildr can let me host data and then I can display it. They have this really unique thing. The repeating list element only works with their data. The reality is the repeating list element doesn't even know what data gets set into it. It has no opinion. What it sees when data set into it is a JSON array of objects. For every object that it gets, it creates one page for that object. And then the second thing it does, it creates a variable for the key value. So in our data setup here, we know we made the key role and the value leader or whatever role it was here. So what it does, it just creates a variable on the end page for the specific keys, and the value is whatever is mapped to it inside of that JSON object. And it's the same thing no matter what data source you're putting into it. You could create your own data set like we kind of just did here in these fields. You could be getting data from anywhere on the web, like a third-party data provider, like your CRM. If you wanted to display records from your CRM, that is the format. JSON's the format that you would get those records in. And then you would simply set it in. Xano is a really common backend that some people use with Bildr, and they're basically mapping values in Bildr to their Xano data through a JSON structure initially. The other really cool example that I'm super passionate about right now is that you can actually create a JSON structure of whatever it is that you want and set it into a repeating list in Bildr and do whatever it is that you want from it. And the thing that's right now it's really big is AI. You can prompt AI to give you a JSON formatted response. So you're not just chatting in normal written text. You can get a structured reply in JSON back from the AI and allow that to set a repeating list element. You can actually perform any logic that you want off of that response. So you could say, hey, give me a list of ingredients in this pie in a JSON object. You could set those ingredients into a repeating list page in Bildr. And then as soon as this page loads up, you could look at the value that they gave you, the ingredient that they gave you, and you could go run another OpenAI call to generate an image of that particular thing. And all of a sudden you've got all these ingredients for something that you're making, and you have even unique AI generated imagery for those. And it all happens instantaneously through the repeating list and then through the page load processes that you have. So I won't go all the way down that. That would be its whole own video to talk about how to do that. But it's an example of why it's so important to understand, especially the Bildr repeating lists and especially how to use JSON. Even if you don't feel like you're a developer, JSON's a very simplistic data structure. It's not code. It truthfully is just a data structure that is very easy to unravel once you know what's going on with it. And you can use it to power any sort of logic that you want. So now that I've given that spiel, let's go ahead and put our role page in our repeating list right here. So we're going to say our role page that we just created is now going to show up in our repeating list. Excellent. We do need to give this repeating list the same value that we gave the text before. So we're going to go to our team's users relationship collection, go to our team roles. And now, whenever we load up the page, just like we page bind any individual value in a field, we're binding it directly to this repeating list right here. And on our row page now, one thing that we want to do is we need to bind this to a variable that gets set into it. We know that we named every single key as role. And so whenever our page opens up here and gets created, there's going to be a variable named role that we want to set directly into this on the page. So now when we load our page, what we're going to see is that every unique value we gave each one of our records inside that JSON array that we put into the field is now going to show up on our page. So we can see the leader showing up for Josh 3, note taker for Josh here. Under Josh 2, we gave him 3 roles, so he's got leader, food getter, and note taker. And we see that for every single option that we have. And each one of these are individual pages showing up one time for every single potential value that we put into that field. Some other really common examples of this in the real world. Let's say you have a CRM and you want to list out the phone numbers for an individual and you want to list out addresses for the individual. You can do this in a one-to-many relationship collection where you have an additional collection for addresses and all it does is reference the user that address came from. That works totally fine. And that might be the best method if you were going to be using those records in their own use case. Let's say I was maybe going to create a list to call everybody and I needed to just get phone numbers really frequently. I might want to just have a phone number collection. But if I knew I was only ever going to reference those phone numbers whenever I loaded that individual contact onto a page, I could just go ahead and say, you know what, I'm going to put them on one individual record for that user in a field, and I'm going to list everyone out, and then I'm going to be able to reference that phone number whenever I load that user, and they can have an unlimited number of phone numbers. They're not limited to just one phone number because they only have one phone number field. That brings me actually to an additional bonus example here. Let's say we were doing phone numbers, and let's say phone number is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, one thing that's really common with phone numbers is it's not just the phone number, maybe it's the area code that's separate, or in this case, let's say we want a type, mobile, office, any sort of option like that is a really common type of phone number. We want to be able to know so that we can categorize it later on. And again, we were choosing to set it up inside of our initial array here or a list inside of a field. We could do this in a relational data collection 100%, but this is just something that if we chose to do this, we can go this route. So I'm going to delete the rest of these records. I'm going to close this off. So now I've got a phone and type being created inside this team roles collection for this individual. And the important thing is these variables are going to get created when I load that repeating list page. And because I separated these by a comma and not in separate brackets, they're the same object. We've basically said this is the same data record. If I wanted a different record, I would have different brackets around it for another object. So let's go over here and let's make one small adjustment. Let's go ahead and duplicate these. We've got role already. So let's say phone and let's say type. And now for one of our records, we're actually going to load up a page that has the phone number and the type of phone number instead. So we've got the phone number and type of phone number for Josh, Josh 2, and the rest, we still have the role because we still had the role named in their values. And we still have the element right here that is bound to the role variable created on the page. So I wanted to share this example specifically because a lot of people come to Bildr if they are a developer with database design experience where this is a more common option for them, where they put the multiple values inside of an individual field that's nested inside that collection as opposed to a separate relational data collection. And it's also a really big unlock to understand that you can create JSON in any format that you want, embed it anywhere that you want, or use it however you want, and then use it inside of a repeating list to generate any number of pages that do whatever it is that you want to. You're not limited to just data collection, data being bound there. You really don't have any limits in what you're able to do. So those are all the curveballs I have for you when it comes to data collection, design, and relationships. So hopefully that was helpful. Look forward to seeing you in the next video.